So, what is the difference between science and what I call sciencism? Well, sciencism is to me what happens when and what people have or are engaging in when they outsource their own critical thinking skills, when they outsource their own ability to observe, to notice phenomena, when they outsource their own ability to interpret the meaning of an event to something or someone else. So when somebody says, I'm not going to bother trying to figure it out myself, I'm not going to run this through any series of or process of little tests or anything to figure out if this is true or false or good or evil or right or wrong or beautiful or something else, right? I'm just going to let the TV tell me what to think. I'm just going to let my social peer group tell me what to think. Whatever everybody else is doing, that's what I'm doing. And I say this because, I've been there. I grew up in a family that was very religious. My dad was a minister. I was the kid in church, doing the Sunday music projector. And I was really into it. And I'm still very spiritual. But the thing that I noticed happening in that environment that I didn't really care for was that some people were outsourcing their critical thinking skills to my dad. God bless his sweet soul, he's not alive anymore. But however well-intentioned he may have been as a minister, it's not his job to do your thinking for you, right? So sometimes churches and social groups can get into trouble when they try to create dogma. Like, you have to believe X, Y, and Z, or you're out of the club. You're going to hell unless you believe X, Y, and Z. We're going to shun you. We're going to, make you wear the scarlet letter because you committed adultery or something. Let's say if we're going back to that English literature example about the woman that had to wear a letter A in her community because she had an affair. Or, people used to get put in the stockades and they had their little heads sticking out in their hands and people would throw like rotten vegetables at them when they did something that was against the group norms or way of being. So no matter how ridiculous or unscientific the social norm was, right? Now, fast forward 20 years, I'm way more spiritual than I ever have been because I've gone through things in life. I'm only 42, but I've been around for, an adult for 22, 24 years. So I have seen some stuff that has made me believe some things. And so that's my point, is that I have started to think for myself and I started to apply what science is really all about. The scientific method of inquiry. So it's 4 steps, and I want to talk to you about them real quick. The first one that can help you to be a science-loving person in your own life and is to help you to provide you with a little frame of reference or a mental model for navigating the world around you and within you, is to use what science is really all about, the scientific method of inquiry. So the first step to use the scientific method is to observe stuff that happens, right? You see a flock of birds flying by, interesting. You see some people walking by, interesting. Here's a real life example. I used to work as a tire mounter and balancer and an alignment technician at Sears Auto Center back when I lived in South Carolina 20 years ago. And I used to notice this trend that on any given day of the week, we would have one type of vehicle that would come in to get tires put on or to get worked on. Some days it was like Ford trucks. Other days it was Toyota Corollas. It was just a really weird thing. And, it got me thinking about human behavior patterns and the collective unconscious and are we all just, connected in some way that we don't realize that makes us all go take care of our same kind of car on the same kind of day. Well, that's an explanation that I came up with that's not proven true or false, right? So it's a hypothesis. That's step number 2, is that once you observe stuff, you need to create a hypothesis or a probable explanation that you think it could be. Step number 3 is you need to create some kind of experiment to test your hypothesis. to find out if there's supporting evidence for your claim. And that is step number 3. What did I say there? Oh yeah, so step number 3 is to look at your results of your experiment and determine if they support your hypothesis or your claim. And if the results of your own experimentation and testing of your hypothesis don't validate or support your claim, what do you do then? Step number 4, you refine your hypothesis. You make it better, you make it more accurate, or you discard it altogether and you try a new one. And then you repeat the process. So you go back to observing, go back to the drawing board, try it again. Is this true or false? Let's take an experiment and find out, is there supporting evidence? Do other people who test out this hypothesis get the same results, right? So let's compare that back to what I said earlier about the church example. Everybody might believe that this guy is a good guy because he's very smiley and he's very nice. He does the whole smiley glad hand thing. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. You're so great. And it turns out that he's beaten his wife and kids at home and nobody knew about it, right? So how does that happen? It happens because people stop thinking for themselves. So if you've never been mistreated by anybody, it might not be in your own, normal day-to-day way of doing things to think about the fact that there are some people out there that might lie to you or deceive you or have a hidden agenda. Just like maybe a deer wouldn't think to look up in the sky until the day that like a pterodactyl comes and starts picking off the herd, right? And at first a lot of the deer get picked off because they're not used to looking in the sky at predators. But eventually they start to smarten up using some version of this scientific method of inquiry. The deer that look up, they notice the pterodactyl and they don't get taken. Interesting. So maybe I should start looking up, right? So my point is that if you find people telling you to just believe something because a scientist said so, if you should just believe it without question, that's actually a fallacy of argumentation called appeal to authority. Just because someone is in a position of authority, does not mean that the argument or the claim that they're making is valid or sound. It doesn't mean that it makes sense or that it's actually connected with reality. So in order for you to come up with a claim that makes sense, it needs to both be logical, right? And it needs to apply to real life. It needs to actually be happening. And so you need to be able to look and use the scientific method of inquiry to find that out. So go forth today and use the scientific method of inquiry. Don't outsource your thinking lest you become like those, traditional, dogmatic, legalistic, let's say, some of us have met religious people like that we did not really get along with too well because, they might make you feel bad about yourself because you're not the same as them. And maybe they don't even have evidence that their claim is accurate, right? So I've met a lot of really nice church-going people. And like I said, I personally am very spiritual. So it's not meant to be a diss against religion or anything. But it is meant to be an example that if you find yourself just blindly doing whatever science allegedly told you to do, you're acting just like somebody that might be in a cult. You don't want to act like a cult member because don't drink the Kool-Aid, right? If you ever heard of Jonestown, you know what I'm talking about. Just because someone tells you it's Kool-Aid doesn't mean it's actually Kool-Aid. Have a great day.